All right. Well, welcome everybody. Welcome to the Coaching Cafe today. Our topic is around navigating confidentiality in regards to workplace coaching. And I'm joined by the fabulous Bridget Calvert. Bridget, welcome.
Thank you, Paula. Thanks for having me.
Very, very happy to have you. And we've got people dialing in from all over the world today. We've got Greece. It's 5 a.m. in Greece this morning.
Mhm.
So welcome and thank you for joining the line. We've got all around Australia, Fiji. Oh, I like
Mhm.
the idea of being in Fiji, Canada. So welcome to you from wherever you're dialing in from, or if you're listening to us on your favorite streaming service. Happy Friday, and we are very excited to be here with you.
Lovely.
As we begin, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of the lands upon which we meet today and their continuing connection to the land, waters, and communities of Australia and the lands from all around the world upon which you might be joining us. We pay our respects to them and their elders, past, present, and emerging, and elders from Indigenous communities from around the world. Okay, so our agenda for today, Bridget, we're running this series that is specifically around looking at different parts of the ICF core competencies. And today we're looking at demonstrates ethical practice, and we're specifically looking about around confidentiality and thinking about coaching agreements and coaching boundaries and making sure that as coaches we know what those boundaries are and maintaining them.
Mm.
As always, it's about creating a shared learning experience. So we love to hear from the people on the line. If you've got questions or comments, please pop them in the chat and we would love to include them. We love having thought-provoking conversations. And for everybody who is on the line for their CCEs, the ICF CCEs, we will have that available for you at the end. All right, so let's get started, Bridget. And I think one of the things when I was actually putting this all together, I was thinking about it, and it reminds me that we sometimes don't know what other people don't know. So
Mm.
because we live in the coaching world and we are talking about coaching all the time and we live and we breathe the coaching,
Yeah.
is you can often forget that people outside of this world don't know what coaching truly is and what it means.
Mm.
And so I was reflecting on this just in regards to how we set up coaching conversations is we get, sometimes we'll get a phone call and they say, "Oh, we need so and so to be coached." And we go in and can perhaps think, well, they know what they've asked for coaching, so they know what coaching is. But in
Mm.
actual fact, they don't. And so really going back to what those fundamentals are about confidentiality in coaching is really critical.
Absolutely, very important. I think that in workplaces where people have been, sort of navigated toward a coaching relationship, that can be really important too. And we can talk about that obviously as we progress through today. But very, very important to get clear around not only the coaching agreement, what's included in that agreement, but also the boundaries within which we're having these conversations.
Yes, we facilitate a lot of programs for organizations, and I often walk away going, I can't believe people don't know about this yet. How come they don't know about it? And then we have to remind ourselves that not everybody's had the luxury of attending programs like we have and being fully immersed. And I think that links in with the what you don't know. So when we're looking at our ICF core competencies, we're looking at demonstrates ethical practice. And today we're really focusing on maintains confidentiality with client information per stakeholder agreements and pertinent laws. And it's important that we do have people from all over the world. So knowing what are those laws that are required from your where you are residing. So in Australia, we have workplace laws, we have privacy laws. There's a range of laws that underpin this. But there's also making sure that we are maintaining confidentiality from an ICF perspective as well. All right, so Bridget, I'm going to hand over to you for this one. This is a little diagram that we use in our coaching around understanding that coaching relationship. Would you like to take us through that?
Sure, absolutely. So your coaching relationship, you've obviously got the person being coached or the group being coached, being the coachee. You have your coach, and you've also got the stakeholder. So a person who has a vested interest in the person being coached or the group being coached. That stakeholder may require a return on investment in terms of, how that particular relationship is going with the individual or the group, and they would like some information and feedback, sort of shared back with them around that progress. So essentially, the coach and coachee relationship is a confidential relationship. So anything spoken about in that coaching conversation is confidential. It's really important that that's maintained because you want your coachee to bring 100% of themselves to that conversation so that they can get the most out of that conversation and that they're able to feel comfortable with sharing whatever it is that they want to share and reflect with the coach and be confident knowing that that's where that information stays. Of course, there will be agreed information that will flow between coach and stakeholder, and that is impacted by what the coach and coachee have decided is going to be fed back. So your coach and stakeholder may very well have conversation. It might be at midpoint or end point of the coachee coach relationship. And they'll want, as I say, some sort of return on investment. So what gets fed back? Well, it'll be information that the coach and the coachee have agreed upon. It's not going to be detail, but it may very well be information that is expressed as a sentence or a theme. Perhaps there are scales attached to it. So I really like scaling, with feedback. So on a scale from 1 to 10, there might be certain words that represent topics like relationship building or communication or conflict resolution or whatever it is that's part of that coaching relationship with the coachee. So there might be words that represent areas that are being worked on, certainly not detail. And there might be a scale, from 1 to 10, where they started at that point. It might be a 5 or 6 out of 10 when it comes to some sort of communication, and perhaps midpoint that 5 or 6 is turned into a 7 or an 8. And how would they know? So is there a sentence or something that would demonstrate some sort of progress? And at endpoint as well, so that the coachee can feel confident that whatever the coach is sharing has been agreed to by the coachee, and that the content of those conversations remain confidential. And also, too, in terms of shared information and feedback flowing through the stakeholder and the coachee. The stakeholder needs to respect that it is a confidential conversation and that it's really up to the coachee what gets fed back. But in terms of return on investment, as I say, words, sentences, a theme gets flowed back, and a scale might be the representation of progress.
And I think this can be slightly easier to do when you are an external coach and you are being brought in for an assignment.
Mm.
I'm wondering, Bridget, how you see this when it's an internal coach. So it's someone who works with the person and just what might be different from that perspective.
Yeah, I mean the same rules apply, and it can be really challenging, I guess, if you have a coachee and a coach who are also wearing different hats. Perhaps it's a manager or something. So therefore, the coachee doesn't necessarily feel like they can share information. So sometimes having other people from different teams or departments coach that coachee can create a better environment for that conversation to flow. So it's really about determining what's going to be the best scenario for that coachee that's going to bring out their best and allow them um, to reflect and learn and share and what have you in the environment or the four walls within which they work, and what will serve them the best, what will support them the best. And maybe it's not their manager or someone in their team, but perhaps another internal coach from a different space that can offer that support.
Yeah, and I think when you're setting up internal coaching teams or departments in organizations, this is one of those areas that you really need to spend some time thinking about. How do we create the environment where we can have these coaching relationships? And what will we do how do we make sure that we're meeting the needs from a confidentiality perspective? So if you are looking at building internal coaching capability, this is one of those areas that you really need to think about before you move forward, because it's actually critical. Because you're right, Bridget, because it is about the coachee, and we do want to create that space where they can feel comfortable and that they trust that their conversation is going to not go anywhere, as in not be taken out of the conversation that you're having, which
Mm.
is actually quite difficult when you are an internal coach, because now you have additional information that you didn't have before. And making sure that you don't blur those lines between my role as a coach and the other roles that they have.
Yeah, it is really critical, and it can be more challenging for internal coaches than external coaches. But another reason why it's so critical to understand the difference between coaching and other modalities, and really educating people around confidentiality rules, ethical practice around coaching, what it is and what it's not, so that people are really clear, internal people receiving coaching, people in the environment that are exposed to coaching, as well as the coach being able to educate people around that too.
Yeah, and I think it's where setting up that conversation at the beginning is really critical, and not assuming that people know what the role of the coach is, what are those ethical boundaries around that, and making sure that sometimes you have to say the things out loud just to make sure, or to ask the questions. Andy's asked, can both you and Paula provide your contact details, including emails and contact full numbers, please? Yes, Andy, we can absolutely pop that into the chat for you. So you're welcome to get in contact with us.
Sure.
Or you can head to opendoorcoaching.com.au and you'll find all of our details there as well. Um, and so I think it's that bit about remembering that even though we put it into a contract, so often we'll have a contract for a piece of work, just because we've put it in the contract doesn't mean that everybody's read it and understood it and knows exactly what it is. And making that really clear is critical and important.
Absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, certainly verbalizing it as well as it being in some sort of hard copy or soft copy is really important.
Yeah. So thinking about that coaching agreement, we've put together some things about what needs to be included in that coaching agreement. Bridget, did you want to again take us through this?
Sure. So you've got your coaching agreement there in the center. You've got the stakeholders who, have a stake in this coaching relationship. Of course, you'll have the purpose of the coaching, which is makes part of that coaching agreement. For what purpose are we actually running this coaching program or coaching relationship? And also to included in that coaching agreement, potentially from having a needs analysis, or having undertaken a needs analysis with the client, with the stakeholder, it becomes really clear within that coaching agreement what will be reported and what remains confidential. And as I say, what will be reported it could be based around themes of what's the need for the coaching in the first place? For what purpose are we undertaking this coaching relationship? So there will be outcomes that are, desired from taking part in that coaching. And so there will be some reporting back on those outcomes without the detail being included from around the conversation. So as I say, it might be words, it might have to do with relationships in the workplace, or communication, or it could be a multitude of things. But essentially, what are those key words? What do we make them mean when we're at a 5 or a 6 out of 10? What might that look like in a couple of sentences? What might it sound like? And what happens when that scale moves up? How do we know that we're progressing? So that the stakeholders have a return on investment and understand that the client or the coachee, be that the individual or the team, are progressing and moving toward that desired outcome. And certainly any of the content of those conversations will remain confidential, and that needs to be a really, really clear agreement so that there's no blurred lines as the relationship develops, and that everyone has a really clear understanding of what it means, um, you know, what's reported and what remains confidential, so that we're confident in expressing those boundaries as time goes on.
Yeah, and I think when we think about this coaching agreement, it's really about that agreed understanding of what coaching is, what will be reported, what's the reason we're doing the coaching, and that all parties, if we think about the triangle that we had first, is that all parties are feel confident and comfortable with that's what's going to be the approach, because we don't want a HR manager or any manager. We don't want a stakeholder. It's probably the better term. We don't want a stakeholder coming in asking us for confidential information and then it being difficult at that point to go back and explain what we can and can't report on. The setting it up front is really critical in that space.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And as we mentioned before too, in that triangle, it'll also be up to the coachee as to what they feed back to the stakeholder themselves, or what sorts of conversations they might have in between sessions or at those meeting midpoint, endpoint reviews.
And so, Bridget, have you had examples where this has come up, where you've been asked for information, and what have you done about it?
Yeah, that's a couple of times, but that's where the clear agreement has to come. So it's really important to feel confident that you can refer to the coaching agreement and really, I guess, reiterate or clarify with that stakeholder how important it is for the coachee to feel like they can have conversations and understand that conversation is confidential, because then they bring their best to that conversation, and they're also getting the best out of that coaching connection, and in turn means that they're going back into the workplace, developing, progressing, feeling confident that what goes on in that conversation remains confidential. So it's a really important, in fact, it's key to that relationship being successful, that stakeholders recognise, and it's a really clear reminder. So, absolutely feeling confident and not feeling uncomfortable with just repeating that and just reiterating the coaching agreement and the value and purpose for that confidentiality, and how it's all about the coachee. And that is really the purpose of it, to support them to develop further. And part of that is their understanding that the relationship is confidential.
Yeah, and I think what we really need is for all parties to have that understanding. I'm just trying to think, because even from an internal perspective, we want coaching to be part of all day, everyday conversations. But
Mm.
in order for that to happen, people need to know the different modalities. So when we are actually coaching and we're not coaching, um, and we definitely don't want someone who's been told they have to go to coaching. And we know that this happens, even though it's not always the right way to set up a coaching arrangement. But we know that,
Mm.
and without this underlying understanding that if the person being told to come to coaching, it doesn't understand that confidentiality piece, they're definitely not going to bring that 100% of themselves to this conversation, because they'll be worried about, well, what will be reported and when will it be reported back, and who's going to know what, and how does this impact other areas of my employment and those sorts of things. And as a coach, that's not what our focus is.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really important to have that conversation. And you might feel that resistance, when people have been told to go to coaching, or, they have to be fixed, or something's gone wrong, or whatever it might be. So there is some resistance in the first place. when you meet people that have been, navigated towards that type of experience. And it does take a little bit of, conversation so that they really understand what coaching is, what it's not, and the ethical boundaries around that experience. And so eventually, those that might have felt resistant to coaching start to understand, oh, actually this really is all about me. The focus, you are focused on me, and I actually am your first priority over, the stakeholder, and this is where I guess the magic happens in terms of really supporting that person to understand that this is all about them, and it's not about trying to fix someone and reporting back to someone else that they've been fixed. So, really, really key part of that coaching relationship.
Yes, and Donna said, couldn't agree more. The agreement is particularly important whereby the stakeholder has identified coaching is required, but perhaps the coachee isn't on board and they may feel that the coaching is being done to them, and rapport is pivotal at that point.
Mm.
And I think this is too where we can have where the more clear we are on this confidentiality and understanding what is required in that coaching agreement and the conversation with stakeholders is also about reframing how the stakeholder is presenting the coaching as well. So, it might be presented as this person's a problem and we need it to fix it, and really helping that stakeholder to understand what our role as a coach is.
Absolutely, and educating those stakeholders around taking it sort of above the line, if you like, in terms of what is the intention for this person, what is it that you want for them. So rather than looking at what they're not doing well, what is it that you would like to see instead to help them to grow, evolve, and develop. So really taking that really lovely growth mindset to coaching, so that even if it has been recommended that someone takes part in a coaching relationship, that everyone goes in there with that positive approach to it, that this is actually all about you, because what we want for you is XYZ, whatever it is. We want to support you and see you be successful and do great things. So I think it's really important to frame it in that way, that it's an absolute gift. As far as I'm concerned, that when you have an opportunity to be involved in a coaching relationship, that's wonderful, wonderful. And it's really around educating those people coming into that coaching space. It's a great thing to be involved in. And not everyone gets that opportunity. So it's a great experience.
And we get people in thinking that coaching is really just for those people who aren't performing, but in actual fact, coaching is for everyone, and it benefits everyone in such different ways. And it doesn't matter where you are on that continuum of performance. It's all about thinking about how you bring out your strengths, how you grow and develop in your role, and so it's also about helping people understand that coaching isn't just for there's a difficult person or that they're not performing in their role, that it's actually for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if we go in with that, that belief that whoever is there, whoever it is that's going to be experiencing the coaching relationship, it might be about lifting, shifting, changing, or raising performance, regardless of where they're at. Whether it is they need to lift, shift, change, or raise performance, or they're high performers that also need to lift in some way or raise something. So it's really, this is who the person is. This is where they're at, and let's support them to lift, shift, change, or raise, regardless of where they are.
Yeah, absolutely. So, thinking about that, we've got some what should be in that agreement so that you're making sure that you're meeting all the requirements from a confidentiality perspective. And if I'm really being, if you're really thinking about this, it's also from making sure that we're doing the best for for the person being coached as well. So it's really in that I'm in that coaching mindset. So if I want to make sure that I'm doing the best by the coachee, being really clear about that really sets up that environment and sets it on a path of success.
Mm, absolutely.
So thinking about the what will be reported, the things that we can absolutely report on are things like attendance and engagement, which if you're a stakeholder, you want to make sure that the person attended the session. And from an engagement perspective, I really like that idea, Bridget, around the scaling. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how engaged from your perspective, and I'd also encourage this to be from the coachee's perspective, getting them to rate their engagement. So when they started, where was their engagement level to where is it now? Because
Mm.
even sometimes that small shift for someone is that's a step forward. So being able to recognize that and report on that, I think is really, really valuable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Then what will be reported are the agreed goals and the progress towards those goals. And as you said, Bridget, it's not going to be a full written report, but it might just be 1 or 2 words. How is that connecting? And we'd really encourage that the coachee themselves provide some feedback as well, because then you're getting it from their perspective, not necessarily from our perspective, and they can share what they really feel will contribute to them in their role.
Absolutely. It is all about the coachee owning the process.
Yeah. So the broad themes, if they've been agreed on, and I mean, they are broad. So when you say the word communication, I mean, communication is the broadest
Mm.
we can come up with, but but it's up to the coach and the coachee around what particular in regards to that communication that you're working on. So broad themes, if they're agreed, and when are those review points? So when are we going to review this so that people are clear and know what those expectations are? So
Mm.
that's what will be reported. And then if we think about what remains confidential, the content of the coaching conversation, so anything brought up in those coaching conversations remains confidential. The only caveat we put on this is that if we have a duty of care to report something, we would report that based under a duty of care. But the coaching conversation itself remains confidential. Any personal disclosures, reflections, and insights. And I think this sums it up really is anything that was not agreed would be shared is
Mm.
what remains confidential. So if it was agreed that we would share it, we share it. If not, if it falls under the everything else.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so our little key messages here are discuss it early. So from our experience, what we have found is having these conversations up front, being really clear about it, and not assuming that people know is really important. So we discuss it early so that we make sure that everyone's in agreement and we agree it clearly. And often that's where it's in writing and making sure that everyone knows what those expectations are around confidentiality, and then revisit it when needed. So don't necessarily put it on a shelf and expect that I've done it once and that's the end of the story. Sometimes you do need to revisit it, and sometimes it is about asking questions around, how is this going for you? What information would you like to feed back to the stakeholders, and connecting back in with it at that point in time.
Absolutely, especially prior to those review points as well, just checking in with the coachee around, what is to be shared and kept confidential before those review points happen. And, in terms of revisiting it, or reminding stakeholders, well, as you say, it makes it so much uh, it makes it more, I was going to say more easy, but that's not really a word, but it makes it easier to have that clarity up front when it's discussed early and agreed early. Having to remind people around what it is makes it so much easier.
Absolutely. Well, if you can believe it, Bridget, we have come to the end. It just flew past like that.
Yeah.
So thank you everybody for joining us, and thank you for your comments and contribution. We really appreciate it. As always, we have our Certificate 4 in Workplace and Business Coaching, our Diploma in Leadership Coaching. Both of these programs are facilitated by Bridget. If you are interested, then please jump on one of those programs. We also do executive and senior leader coaching. The diploma, in fact, is one of those those programs where we think about coaching in the workplace and really building workplace culture. So absolutely, if that's something that's of interest to you, please reach out to us. Bridget's popped her details in the chat, and I will pop my details in the chat as well. Otherwise, we look forward to catching up with you next week, and we wish you a very happy Friday and enjoy your coaching.
Lovely. Bye for now, everyone.